Welcome in to the Skol Purple podcast as we are here on Fan Line, here, Fan Express Line. And man, oh man, do these Vikings like to make us work for wins. We are blessed with a team that likes to make us sweat. We are working as fans for these wins. Let me tell you, the last 2 weeks, but a win is a win. As much as I was disappointed with the offense the entire game, Kirk Cousins made a good throw to Jefferson. Jefferson made the catch at the end, setting up Joseph for the field goal. And the defense was able to hold really on 2 drives. I mean, when you're making the other team having to kick 2 60-plus yard field goals, obviously making one, I mean, that's pretty good defense. And the defense was really phenomenal throughout the entire first half. They were fantastic, but looking forward to hopefully getting some of you in here and talking about this matchup. And if you are looking to be a part of the show, make sure to email skullpurplepodcast here at gmail.com to get on in and express your thoughts and feelings of the game. And should be a fun time here between the Vikings and the Saints. Again, getting the win. The Saints making it close. But like I said, it was quite the game. I mean, the Vikings offense did not perform very well for most of the game. I mean, you say 28 points, but with all the missed opportunities in that first half, like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I know the Saints defense is actually pretty decent. We saw that today, but come on, man. That 4th and 1, they should have went for it there inside the 10-yard line. Go for that. I'm sorry, O'Connell. There was some other questionable play calling as well. Kirk Cousins did not make plays when he needed to in that first half to really distance this game from being like it was in the end. It just... man, can we just have, a couple of games in a row where it's not this stressful? Like, that's really what I'm just hoping for. Night Inks coming in here with thank you, but we needed that. We'll a little double doink. We're looking like the Bears out there, Night Inks, or I should say the Saints rather are looking like the Bears in that one. So quite the miss there. Lutz, though, the fact that he was able to hit that first one was really incredible. But tough scene seeing the Vikings offense in that first half. And I mean, a lot of the game, really. I mean, the second half, when the Vikings defense did allow scores, the Vikings offense would fold immediately after that, or they would only score 3 points. And again, the complementary football on this team, it just continues to be a problem. But yeah, like I said, if the Vikings would have lost this game, I would not have blamed this on the defense. I'm sorry. I know the defense gave up points in that second half, but how many times did the offense settle for 3? How many times did the offense sputter in that first half when the defense was playing well? And yes, I know you can't expect your offense to score a touchdown every drive, but there's no reason that the Vikings shouldn't have been up like 24-7 or more at halftime if everything would have went, if the offense, just would have executed more. Part of that's on O'Connell, part of that's on Cousins, part of that's on the receivers with drops. Mainly, there was one Jefferson drop in the second half. I'm not talking about the one in the end zone. Yes, he should have caught that, but also was thrown behind him. And then also the Johnny Munt one. That was all on Johnny Munt. He's got to come down with that catch on that third down, and then we settle for the field goal. I was still upset about that, but the offense just did not perform in that first half, and we survived it. That is the one thing I will say about this team is we have shown resiliency to be able to survive games that we probably should have been performing in. But if this was Mike Zimmer's team, I think we'd be probably looking at a 1-3 start right now, to be honest with you. I think we would have still probably won the Green Bay game, but I think the last two games would have been losses because I think the conservative, like, O'Connell was conservative at times in this game, but I think the Vikings offense would have even been more conservative in the game, and some coaching, just one or two coaching things could have been the difference. But once again, 28-25, the final score. Vikings getting the win in London. And yeah, it was a like I said, tough game that the Vikings needed to win. Like, you look at that Saints injury report coming into this game, like, you're thinking, oh man, you're out your starting quarterback, you're out one of your starting receivers, you're out your starting running back. And I know the Saints have depth on the team, but like, come on, like, this is a team you need to beat. They barely did it, but they did it. I'll give them that. But again, it's just like these games against teams that are average or below average, like the Saints, I believe, and the Lions. They're at like right around average, below average. Now, both, the Lions obviously are better than they have been in a while, but the Saints, like, they're not the same team they were with Sean Payton as the coach. Even last year, they weren't that good, and I still don't think they're that good now. Like I said at the beginning of the year when everybody was saying they were contenders, I'm like, let's hold the roll here. Like, I don't think Jameis Winston is a great quarterback. He's got talent, but he's never been able to put it all together, whether injuries, whether whatever else he's got going on. There's still their offensive line, which I had said in the preview to this, I thought was actually still pretty good, but they have some injuries up there and they lost some guys. Ramczyk is still really, really good, the right tackle spot for them. But again, this is just a game that they had to have. They did it. So that's good. That's good. Got the win. Like I said, I'm glad to be 3-1, but these are things that they need to continually try and correct going forward offensively. These stall outs. You start to move the ball and then all of a sudden things stall out. Like, especially after that fake punt that we got the first down on, like, you absolutely have to go score a touchdown on that. Like, it just drove me nuts watching this offense the whole game. Like, there was so many times, other than that first drive, there was so many times we got helped by that pass interference and, could have gone either way maybe, but that Thielen set up the jet sweep to jet us. So, it's again, a win is a win. I'm hoping to get some guys in here. I've sent out the link to a couple of people looking to see if Tony will get in here, and also see if David will get in here, and maybe also somebody else as well, Daniel. But looking forward to hopefully getting a few more people in here. Go ahead and make sure to email if you want to get in. I should probably pull up the email. I don't know if people have already been trying to see. Tony's going to join us here momentarily. See if people have been trying to email or not. But all right, let's go ahead and bring in Tony. Hey, how's it going, Tony? How you feeling? We got the win.
It was a big win. Yeah, how are you feeling?
I mean, I'm a little frustrated. I'll be honest. This game should have not been that close, I don't think, but a win's a win, like I've been saying. And I'm still in firm belief that if this team was a Mike Zimmer led team, it's probably, honestly, I think we're 1-3 right now. Honestly, I really do. So that is one thing I do have to give them credit for, is they have been able to battle through this adversity and get the wins, even though they haven't been pretty wins. They've been able to battle through that adversity. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, this feeling is a lot like we had last week. I mean, really, right? I mean, we had a situation where, I mean, these are the games we lost last year, right?
Yep.
These are the games where we came down to the wire. There was one last drive. I mean, we saw that big pass at the end by Dalton. And I'm just thinking, the Vikings fandom starts coming back over me, right? Where I'm going, here we go again, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
similar to what we felt last week with Goff and the Lions. So yeah, I do think these are games we probably would have lost last year. It doesn't feel great, but I just keep telling myself a win is a win is a win. And we're 3-1. I predicted we would have started 2-2. Those were my preseason prediction. Or that was my preseason prediction, was 2-2. I thought we'd drop one against the Packers, unfortunately, but I'm glad I was wrong there. I was right about the Eagles' loss, but no, 3-1. I'll take it, put it in the back of our minds, and then hopefully we're just looking forward to next week.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, so I'm sure there's probably a few other people that have all predicted correctly so far, but I am 4-0 in my Vikings predictions so far this season, with wins and losses. The only loss I predicted being the Philadelphia game. So I'm not saying I am a fortune teller, but
But you're feeling good about it. Yeah,
yes.
I had a question. I'd love to get your take on this one, because this is something I was mulling over it, and certainly the secondary so far has looked like a liability. I think anybody who's watched the first 4 weeks, obviously outside of that first week with Green Bay when they were still trying to figure things out, the secondary certainly looks like a liability. I know that we were missing Harrison Smith last week, which certainly doesn't help matters, but I almost start to think, like, did we spend a lot of the week game planning for a Jameis Winston-led offense where, I mean, they've been, I mean, really from an offensive perspective, the Saints have been producing a lot of yardage through the air, right, for the first 3 weeks coming into today. So, did we almost game plan, or like you said, I'd love to hear your take. Did it feel like maybe we were game planning, or the defensive scheme almost seemed like we were playing a little soft against the run, looking for a lot of those air yards? And then as we started to pivot, I mean, Dalton is obviously, good enough, certainly, to get the ball downfield, but it just felt like it just didn't seem like our game plan really aligned with how they were attacking us.
Yeah, so I actually did think the defensive coverage was better than probably any game the last 2 games. I think it was probably the best against Green Bay, but I will say that there was definitely some gashing going on again in the running game. It seemed like from the Vikings once again. But yeah, maybe there was a little bit of the Winston plan more so. We were kind of more focused on that, but like I said, this loss, like if this would have been a loss, I'm not blaming the Vikings defense. Like I can tell you right now, like the defense played their butts off in that first half. We should have had at least a 3-score advantage going into halftime. And like I said, if it would have come down to Will Lutz making that and the Saints somehow winning in overtime, I'm sorry. Like you also, like, look at that at the end. Like, you forced them to kick 2 60+ yard field goals. Like, oh, that's bad defense. Like, gosh, that's not bad defense. Like, you're forcing them to kick one of the longest field goals that are attempted in the league. Like, those are not give me's. Like, that they didn't. I mean, they moved the ball. Give them credit, but like I said, this defense, I thought they played their best game since week 1 today. And obviously it wasn't perfect. And obviously there's still things to clean up. But I think this defense made a step in the right direction. There was still definitely some plays, some different things that, didn't go the way we were hoping. But yeah, I guess that's my take on it. Any thoughts on that?
No, I don't think you're incorrect. Of course, I'm just trying to lead you to the water here, but no, I would agree. I mean, I think that ultimately the defense did enough today, right? You can't. I mean, I wish I had the numbers right in front of me, but we were in the red zone how many times and came away with field goals? You have to score touchdowns, right? And especially off of turnovers. I mean, obviously we made them pay a little with the field goals, but yeah, if you come away with touchdowns there, we're talking about a totally different game. right? We put them in obvious passing situations. They can't rely on the run, which was working for them. With us keeping it close, it almost allowed them to kind of continue with the same game plan, which is how they were attacking us and how they were still, again, picking up quite a bit of yards on the ground. So I think we come away with touchdowns there. We're talking about a different ball game altogether. And the drops today. We had the big drop by Munt. I know the ball wasn't exactly where it should have been with Jefferson, but with an elite receiver like that, I mean, he's got it in his hands. Those are balls he's going to typically come down with. And there's probably one or two I'm not even thinking of. So those were the two big ones. But yeah, I think we certainly were in position to really blow this game wide open early. And because we didn't do that, we kind of let them hang around. But thankfully, as you already mentioned, this is not the 2021 Minnesota Vikings. And we come away with a victory today. So I'm happy about that. We can all be happy about 3-1. I don't think if anyone would have told us we're going to start the season 3-1, we wouldn't be upset, right?
Yeah. Well, let's bring in David here, my guy from last week. He joined us the first time. David, good to have you back on again, man.
Hey, guys. How you guys doing today?
Hey, a win's a win. It wasn't pretty.
Yeah. I still got some concerns, too. First, my first thing is Lewis Scene's probably done for the season, if you guys already said that. I saw the replay on that, which is kind of like, I have a lot to say about that, but we can go talk about that later. But that soft defense and no pass rush has to change. Like that, they got to scheme up something, to get these guys, to be at the quarterback. But the defense just looks too soft, even though they held them to 60-yard field goals, like you guys said. It still was pitch and catch, and it's been like that all year. And it's just like these guys are just playing catch out there for those guys. And what I'm thinking too now, I'm looking at Dalvin Cook. Did you guys notice when Dalvin Cook was running the ball, before he got hit, he turned his back to the defender every time?
Yeah, he's maybe playing. That's a good point. That's a really good point. I think he's playing a little bit careful. Doesn't want to.
Yeah, I was telling my wife.
Get that redislocated.
I was telling my wife that, and I was like, watch this. Every time he gets the ball, and right before contact, he turns his back. So at least they can tackle him from behind, just so he won't get hurt. So with that being said, with losing Lewis Seen probably for the season, they need to not start Chandler, but he needs to be in rotation now. So that way we can,
He needs to be in rotation, 100%.
Yeah, he needs to be in rotation now. And Irv Smith and the tight ends and these drop balls. I don't understand what's going on. What do you guys think about that? Like, why are these guys just dropping balls the whole time now?
I don't think Irv had a drop today, unless I'm mistaken.
No, he didn't have a drop, but
but Johnny Munt, Jefferson. Who else? CJ Hams wasn't really a drop. I don't think that was really a drop. They said, "Oh, that's a drop." It's like, you really expect a fullback to lay out and make a catch like that? Are you kidding me?
I expect CJ Ham to.
You expect CJ Ham to? Okay, yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
But these what do you think is happening?
I don't know, man. I don't know if it's just the jitters. I don't know if it's. But yeah, like you can't really say it's jitters either because you're in. Yeah, I don't know.
In the NFL, if it hits your hands,
it's the NFL. Exactly.
Yeah, I will say this. I think that talking about, and I love your question because it reminded me one of the thoughts I had, and I think this was about the third quarter. And this is going to be more of a positive thing, but I felt like Irv Smith today, while he didn't have anything spectacular, it felt like he had a little bit of swagger back. Like, it felt like he had a little bit of that swagger back that we're used to. He seemed a bit more confident. I saw him catch the ball, turn up field, initiate contact. So from a, going forward standpoint, I think that was good to see today because I think as his confidence grows, we know he has the talent. I mean, that dude has got talent, out the what. So I think if he can get back into that rhythm where he's got a little bit of that swagger back, that's going to be good for our offense. So I was happy to see that. I don't know what the deal was. To be honest with you, a drop for a month is kind of like, well, that's why we got Irv Smith. That was what was so concerning when we were seeing
that kind of like cost a touchdown, just like.
But why did you not go for that on 4th and 1? That pissed me off. I'm sorry.
I don't know why.
Why do you not go for that 4th and 1? You pin the Saints back if you don't get it. Like
it's like a long punt if you don't get it at that point. Like I don't understand it, but I can't complain about 3-1 though. And what I'm noticing too
that's
is
true.
just like you guys were saying last year, they lost the close games. This year, it looks like they're winning the close games.
Yes.
So it makes
Daniel Pollock's joining us here as well. We got everybody in the house today, so appreciate everybody coming in here. Daniel, let's hear your thoughts on the game, man. What were your thoughts on everything from the first half to the double doink at the end?
Well, thanks for having me on. It was interesting. I mean, it's one of those games that is basically the epitome of being a Vikings fan. And I don't remember who the analyst was after the game. She said she was exhausted on it. I'm like, welcome to Vikings football. I mean, that's just what we see week in and week out. We got the highs, we got the lows. I mean, we started off hot. Things look good. Running game still is non-existent. I mean, I just don't get it. Dalvin doesn't seem like he knows the lanes quite correctly yet. And for as good as our offensive line was last year at run blocking, it's almost gone this year. You know, we have the same guys essentially out there. So I don't know what's going on with our run game. So that's been a little bit disappointing. I know I just turned on when you guys were talking about the drop passes, obviously huge ones today. Jefferson in the end zone. Jefferson had that other one downfield. Mm-hmm. Obviously the CJ Ham one, like you all said, that one was a lot more forgivable than the other ones. But Johnny Muntz is unforgivable. You know, our tight end game is just non-existent. I mean, it's just nowhere to be found. I don't know how you supplement at this time. Do you maybe try to move CJ Ham to that position? You know, and Irv Smith, I caught the end there again when you guys were talking. He didn't have a bad game. He didn't do a lot. But I know Cam Jordan made one play down the line, running down Dalvin Cook on I think it was a 3rd and short situation, and he just completely missed the block. All he has to do is push him to the outside, and he let Cam Jordan get the inside edge on him and run up the line and tackle Dalvin in the backfield. I mean, those are little things that these tight ends need to do. I mean, if he wants to excel and wants to be this tight end that we all thought he could be when we drafted him, he needs to step up those kind of games too, because that's what we got out of Kyle Rudolph. You know, even though Kyle didn't have the explosive ability that Irv Smith did or does, he was reliable in the run game because he could block, and he had one of the best some of the best hands in the NFL. So he caught everything. So, you know, trying to replace a guy like that, it also maybe gives us a little bit skewed vibe there. But overall, I thought the defense stepped up this week. You know, they were on the field a lot, so that didn't help, and that's because our offense would go 3 and out or, you know, whatever reason, but their defense was on the field a little bit more still than they need to be. So overall, I thought they did a pretty good job. But again, they were playing a backup quarterback, a backup running back. You know, they were playing a lot of guys. You know, we should have won this thing by 3 touchdowns. But at least the defense did step up. Special teams, I thought, did pretty good overall. Obviously, the extra point really would have helped, I think, save some gray hairs on all of our heads. Right. But outside of that, I did think the offense there's just something missing. I mean, this is we heard all offseason that this team was supposed to be revamped, revived. You know, we were supposed to have all these weapons and do great things. But we did get Jefferson involved more in the game today. But then we saw less of KJ Osborne. We saw less of Adam Thielen, and we passed 1 trillion times. You know, and our run game, again, is just gone. So I don't know what it is with this team right now offensively when it's supposed to be our strong point is definitely, I'd say, near the rear.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Yeah, I felt like last week, one of the things that I didn't see. So I felt like we saw a lot of this in week 1. We saw some of it in week 2, and then obviously the game didn't go well. And then I saw it completely almost gone and non-existent in week 3 with the Lions. But I saw it kind of come back today, and that is I saw a lot more motion, like pre-snap motion with the offense today, which something I've been wanting to see for so long, because obviously with the Mike Zimmer kind of era of football, we just almost never saw pre-snap motion, right? It was almost like the play was kind of set, and there weren't a lot of pre-snap reads. There certainly wasn't a lot of wiggle room for Cousins to audible. So I was really excited about that this year. And it seemed like we kind of got away from it for a little bit. So I really was happy to see that kind of come back today. We saw them getting a little creative with Justin Jefferson. Mm-hmm. I know that one, that jet sweep that we did with KJ late in the game, that didn't work out very well. But I like to at least see the creativeness that they're thinking outside the box. You know, those are one of those plays where if it works and it works the way they had intended it to, he looks like a genius, right? Meaning, of course, Kevin O'Connell. So, I like to see the creativity. Hopefully we continue to see it evolve. I think O'Neal had a pretty rough day today. You can't really, I mean, obviously he's got a great matchup there. but the offensive line definitely looked a bit more. There were a few more soft spots than I think this week than we saw in the previous 3 weeks. So, they'll have to. And the other thing, I think you mentioned this, and I'll let you guys talk here, Daniel. But one of the things that you mentioned from the tight end spot that also brings up a good point is if this offensive line is going to start being a bit more susceptible, like we saw today, it'd be interesting to see if they start throwing more people towards the line to start chipping on those edge rushers, especially. I didn't see almost any of that today. Like, I mean, I saw there was one play towards the later end of the game. I think the play was inconsequential, but where Thielen lined up really close to the end of our line. And all I'm thinking is, like, it might take him out of the play, but boy, would it be nice just to see him kind of go and chip and then roll off in the flats or something. And it's just they're not providing almost any help. Like, they're threatening to, where they're bunching up. There's these bunch formations, but then they don't actually do anything, right? They just run the routes. We're not seeing any chipping. Right. And, as much as it would be really annoying to see, dump pass Kirk Cousins come back on the regular basis, it might save him from, what we saw today. So
I want to, before we continue with you guys, I want to point out a couple of things from that first half. The first one was this. Look at this. This was right before Kirk Cousins takes the sack on that. It was a 3rd down and 10, I think. He ends up losing like 4 yards. Look at this green grass he's got right here. And he goes right into the pile, basically, instead of going to that green grass, like just oblivious to the green right here. He could have gone there. And then, of course, we had the miss in the end zone. When he
irritated, he thought Kirk Cousins was going to look Lattimore down to Thielen.
Jefferson wide open in the back end of the end zone. Like, I know we just absolutely crucify Kirk many times, but these are the kind of things that are going to take him from good to elite. These are the types of things where he needs to be able to go and run there on that 3rd down, get the 1st down, and he needs to be able to make that throw to Jefferson. And I think that's probably, if he converts that 3rd down, that's probably at least a field goal. And if you throw that touchdown to Jefferson, I mean, we're not even talking about a missed field goal being the difference in the game. Like, those are just the things that if we get to the playoffs and we're playing the Buccaneers or we're playing the Rams, whoever we're playing in the NFC, those are the types of things you cannot have. Like, I know it's good to win these games. Like I said, I'm glad we won, but like, these are the types of things that could come back to haunt you later in the season. I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts on that and just on Cousins' performance in general. David, I'll go start with you first.
I don't want Kurt running at all. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Like, if it's not like 3 or 4 yards and he can get out of bounds and he can slide safely, I don't running at all, because, like I said last week, the best ability is availability. So I don't want any mishaps with Kurt getting hit, getting a concussion, or anything like that happening.
Well, at least Sean Mannion's not the backup anymore. That's
exactly. Now, as far as the JJ, missed in the end zone, I'm kind of okay with it because they won the game, and I kind of feel like after that game with the Eagles, where they were just forcing it to him, you got to get these other guys involved too to kind of open him up also. So I'm kind of okay with it. Like, you missed them, we still got 3 points out of the situation, but that's gonna happen. Like, it's gonna happen. Yeah, it's not no big deal to me.
Yeah, and I'll pile
on.
I'll agree with both those takes, really. Kurt getting out of the pocket, I mean, it's pretty uncharacteristic of him. I mean, career yardage is very low for him. So I'm not going to put him, with Lamar Jackson or anybody like that that's expected to run like that. But I see what you're saying. I mean, there's that much grass, 3rd and short instead of taking a sack, try and get it. And, his elite games, when he's been looked at as well, maybe he is top 5-ish type quarterback. He's been able to run the football, and that just amps up his team. So, situationally, it's not the worst idea. But on that Jefferson miss, and like was just said, everyone misses those kind of open plays. I mean, you could look at any NFL quarterback and you're going to see spots where they're like, whoa, how'd you not see that guy? But that was an instance. Again, I think their defensive line just created so much havoc. He was forced to get rid of the ball too soon. I think that was a pass play to Thielen. It ended up being short of the goal line, but I think that our offensive line today, and like was mentioned earlier as well, O'Neal just struggled today against Cam Jordan, and that pressure was coming from that side. That's the side he was targeting, and he had just had to get rid of it. I mean, maybe give him another half second. He takes that second progression and looks at Jefferson, and we have a different result.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think one thing before I let Tony get in here, there is no doubt that there was a lot of pressure in his face when he had literally no time to react. Like the Demario Davis blitz when he just was on him right after the play action. That was questionable. Like how are you letting him get through? And then just a couple of more things, I guess, on the offense. Like I said, that fourth down, they should have went for that fourth down and won from inside the 10. And yeah, there was a lot of second and long situations where we were running the ball, and I did not like that. Like, I'm not a big second and long runner. Like, it's not like you can't do it ever, but when it's as consistent as it seemed like it was for the Vikings offense, like you're just asking for third and long if you're getting, if you're running on second and long, like most of the time, like usually you don't pop those out for big runs, I guess, at least from what I've seen. But yeah, I guess, Tony, I'll let you go and comment on that and whatever else you wanted to mention here.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I'm so, trying to be forward looking now. I mean, the game's over, right? Like we won. So just looking at, how we're going to make modifications, how we're going to pivot, and really what other teams are going to look to do. It was kind of like after the Detroit game, and we spent, basically 3 quarters not knowing what to do offensively because basically Jefferson was triple covered for the vast majority of that game. Mm-hmm. So we knew that unless, we did something vastly different, meaning starting to pivot away from Jefferson going to Thielen and Osborne and Ham and Irv, right, that we were going to be stuck in other defenses. We're going to do the same thing because if it works, I mean, they all watch film too, right? So looking at like this week and our offensive line and some of the struggles there, we're going to need to have an answer for when the opposing team's essentially getting that much pressure rushing 4 people. Like we have to have an answer. And I did see that, obviously we were running some screenplays, some of the jet sweeps. So we saw them attempting to do some of those things, but I just want to see that continue to evolve because if we get pegged as this is the way to basically beat this offense, it's going to be really tough. I mean, all these guys are professionals, right? Even the worst player and worst coach on an NFL roster is elite, right? They had to have been at some other level. So it's always like my Mark Madsen comparison. I know it's basketball and football. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Mark Madsen.
Mad Dog.
Used to play, the Mad Dog.
I'm from LA right here, Laker fan.
There you go. So my whole point, my Mark Madsen point I always make to the average Joe, the armchair quarterbacks is they'll be talking about this guy stinks and, whatever. They'll be talking about some guy on your team watching whatever sport. And I go, look, if you played Mark Madsen, who was arguably, I think, one of the most uncoordinated professional athletes I've ever seen. If you could be like a rec league all-star, you play Mark Madsen, I guarantee you're not scoring 1 point. He is dunking all over you, right? So that's what I always say. Like all these guys are elite, all these coaches are elite, and we just have to continue to evolve. And it's going to put a lot of pressure on Kevin O'Connell and the new staff. Can they pivot? Can they find their own weaknesses so they go, hey, when they game plan to do this, how are we going to do something different? How are we going to pivot away from that to counteract that? Because if we don't have a counterpunch, we kind of saw that a little bit in that Detroit game, right? It felt like we were just floundering until they figured out what do we do differently. So that was a little scary to me. Obviously glad we came away from the win. We saw a little bit of that this week. I just want us to continue to evolve.
Yeah. And that's the key. I think if we can evolve as an offense and actually learn from these mistakes and these lack of touchdown drives, then I'm going to be a little bit more happy. Like, so next week against the Bears, like, let's see this team win by double digits next week. Like this Bears team is not a team that is, I know the NFL is the NFL and they're good. They're teams that are, not so good and they come up with upsets or they get a good game every now and then, but you got to win against the Bears handily next week, don't you? Like, I mean, you gotta be able to come out next week. And like, I like how they did it this week, and it looked like the scripted plays were great from Kevin O'Connell here today to start the ball game, and then things just kind of fell off the wagon. So that's something that we're going to be interested to see too, on if he can continue to be better at adjusting in game, because you think too about the Green Bay game, like all the time they had to prepare for that game and all the things that they did to be able to prepare for that game. Well, now going forward, you've got a week to prepare for everybody. So if you're able to kind of squeeze all that information into your defensive and offensive players, it'll be interesting. And obviously now that the Vikings have film on their offense, that was another thing. The Packers didn't have any film on the new Vikings offense or defense. But I think the shorter preparation, maybe the Vikings haven't maybe caught up on that yet, maybe. And maybe I'm a little off base there, but I just feel like maybe they need to figure out what they're doing maybe incorrectly in preparation, or maybe it's just the lack of execution in the moment. David, do you want to comment on that?
I think it's basically like lack of execution. And I think O'Connell is going to take some time for this offense to actually gel and figure it out, because like coming from LA, they don't really use the tight ends that much, and they don't have a fullback. So that whole offensive scheme that he has, and you bring it to Minnesota, he has to tailor it to the players that he has. And I think it's going to take some time for that to kind of like gel together and kind of figure it out. But as long as they're like, taking steps in the right direction, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Daniel, you look like you have a thought there.
Yeah. And that's completely true. I mean, we have the CJ Hams, which isn't normally, aligned with his style of offense, but I think CJ is enough of an athlete that he can kind of get by with a player like him. So it's trying to work with those players. I completely understand that, but I still think there's more ways we can get Dalvin Cook involved. I mean, he's still a top 5 running back in the NFL, whether or not you think that's actual rushing attack versus complete game, because to me, it's more complete game. But I think Dalvin should be utilized in the pass game more. It's how do we get him involved? Get the ball in his hands. We run these quick screens out to wide receivers. Even though it's Justin Jefferson, our blocking has been almost non-existent out there on the outside to those really amounting to anything. So can we run more of that screen game, like Tony mentioned earlier, to try and get, the defense to just take that step back, out of the box? Then we can open up our run game a little more. We saw it at the beginning of this game, and then it disappeared till the end. The jet sweep worked with Jefferson, and that's probably because we didn't use it since the opening drive. So, but we need to use all of those style of plays more often versus just drop back, to a 7-step drop and let it fly.
Before I let Tony go here, I wanted to mention the mentioning of Dalvin Cook getting more involved in the passing game. It was cool to see him lined up on the outside. That was something that I thought we might see more of this year because of Kevin O'Connell with a modern offense and stuff. And I know there was some jokes thrown about that on Twitter. I think maybe even Daniel threw a couple tweets out like, this new offense, come on, where are we at here? But I thought that was nice to see. Like, you got to get some of your athletes like Dalvin Cook, who does have the ability to beat a linebacker in space. You got to get him the ability to at least have a chance to win one-on-one against one of those guys. And then, put Alexander Madison back in there. Maybe put Jefferson in the backfield. We saw that a couple of times today. I want to see more of DC on the outside. I do. And it'll be interesting to see if they keep doing that. Tony, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think Dalvin's a very, very talented back, right? Like, so I don't think any of us can dispute the fact that he should be more involved in the offense as long as it makes sense with game script and everything else. My hot take that nobody's stated so far yet, only because nobody really asked, but I'm going to provide it anyway.
Let's hear it.
Is I do think this is Dalvin's last year in purple. I think this will be his last year in Minnesota. We'll see what happens. Obviously, if all of a sudden we win the Super Bowl and this, that, or whatever happens, right? Like, anything can happen. But my bold prediction is that this will be his last year with the Vikings. I just think that looking at the Rams offense and how the league kind of runs offenses at this point, devaluing that running back spot, I think that the crazy aspect to that statement that I just made, though, is I also think it's possible And I think it's almost even more likely that this is Madison's last year in purple, because I think that he would like to be a feature back somewhere, and I think he's earned that. I hope he gets that. As a Vikings fan, I certainly would not cheer for him against the Vikings, but when he's not playing the Vikings, I would love to see him succeed somewhere else. But I think as far as this year is concerned, yes, I want to see him more involved. I want to see us spread him out like everyone in here has already stated. But my bold prediction to tack on to everyone else's statement is that savor it while you can. I think he will get shopped at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting to see the Vikings take a new approach with running backs, like not paying running backs big money, I think is something that we're going to see the Vikings do. And if you think about it, with Justin Jefferson going to be making how much money he's going to be making, Kirk still making as much money as he's making, defensive players, like you want to keep Za'Darius maybe in the future, or at least Daniil. You're going to have to cut costs somewhere. And I am a firm believer that running back is the most disposable position in the NFL. I do not think it's a very important position. Not that you shouldn't have an athlete out there or whatever, but there are so many running backs that are good, or at least good enough if you have a good offensive line, that you don't need to you don't need to spend $10 million a year on a running back or more, like the Cowboys are doing with Ezekiel Elliott. That's just crazy. Like, you don't need to spend that kind of money. They're running backs that grow on trees in the draft. I mean, we're seeing 6th and 7th rounders, UDFAs, for crying out loud, are making names for themselves in this league. Like, you can't tell me that you need to have a top tier running back to be successful. And here's another thing I'll mention before I get off my soapbox here. The Vikings and all the NFL, I think they're, well, let me backtrack here. If you go back and you look at all the Super Bowls from the last 20 years, how many times was there a top tier running back on the roster of the winning football team? Think about it. There was not many. Marshawn Lynch is probably the last one you can really think of. Okay, that's a top 5 type running back that was on that roster. If you go back, look at all the Tom Brady teams. Did they have a number 1 type running back on their roster? No. There's a bunch of James Whites and all these other guys. It's like the running back position does not matter if you have if it's just somebody that you can find in the draft for cheap. And we saw it with the Patriots. We've seen it with other teams around the league. Even the Dolphins, to an extent, they're kind of doing that a little bit. I think they I can't remember what they paid Chase Edmonds. They might have paid him too much, but yeah, the 49ers, they've kind of lived by that philosophy. So I'm kind of wondering if Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell kind of go with that same type of philosophy going forward. Tony, were you going to say something there yet, or David?
No.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like skewed a little bit. I think it's more like the type of running back that you have, because a lot of these running backs that come out of college, they're one dimensional. Like some guys can just run, some guys can run to the outside, some guys can only run screenplays, some guys are pass catching running backs. When you have a running back of Dalvin Cook's caliber that can basically do it all, you kind of want to keep that guy, in house. I just hate the fact that people will say like, oh, the running back, situation is not that good. Well, college isn't really putting them out as being complete running backs anymore. Like if you look at Adrian Peterson was probably the best running back Viking of all time in everybody else's opinion, but not mine. I feel Robert Smith was better because Robert Smith could block, he could catch, he could do everything else, stuff like that. So I don't think the running back situation should be devalued. I just think there's different types of running back. Look at Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is able to take over a game if he wants to. If it's deemed to. Those type of backs are like, you can't find them anymore. That's why some of these teams get these back by committees. And you think about it, when they have like back by committee, they rotate these guys, out a lot. Look at Sony Michel. He's been with the Patriots, he's been with the Rams. Now he's a Charger. They just keep rolling these guys out because these guys are not complete running backs. There's a difference between a complete running back to a guy that's just athletic back there. Like when you look at Cook, Cook can do it all. Cook can catch, he can block, you know, he can run, he can take over a game. He has that speed burst, but his only downfall is his availability. He's always hurt. And I really don't think Cook is going to be gone this year. I think the guy who's probably going to be gone this year is probably going to be Danielle Hunter, in my opinion.
Ooh,
that's just what I'm thinking is going to be Danielle Hunter. Yeah, and I think because I'm not saying he's doing bad this year, but I'm just saying like you need to be more athletic on the outside, and it's easier to restructure Dalvin Cook and keep him for another year when you got to pay Danielle Hunter this crazy amount of money when you could just go and get somebody like Randy Gregory in the draft to be athletic on the outside. I don't think they're going to pay that much, for Danielle Hunter, considering Justin Jefferson needs to get paid. It's going to be the defense that guys are going to be leaving. Harrison Smith might be a guy that might not be here next year. I think all the weapons that's on offense, they're going to try to keep them in-house. And with the Vikings, they've never been really a team to just devalue guys until their value pretty much goes away. They always restructure guys and make sure these hometown discounts stay. They don't really just get rid of guys. They keep them in-house for a while.
Well, I think that's what'll be interesting to see the difference between, kind of Kwesi and Spielman, because I think you're absolutely right. I think that was kind of the Spielman way of things, right? We generally look to restructure. We didn't really, for lack of a better phrase, kind of cut the fat when we needed to at times. Mm-hmm. And I don't disagree with you. I think the big thing with the running back situation is it's just the league is moving, and by league I mean teams, right? Teams are moving to what the league is doing as it pertains to how they ref games, how generally offenses are being run. I mean, if you look at kind of where we're getting soft from a game call standpoint, we've seen them really emphasize illegal contact past that 5-yard buffer, right?
An eligible receiver too.
Is really trying to perpetuate, the passing game and trying to move to a more pass happy league in general. So I think what teams look at when they're looking at their backfield is return on investment, right? So how much money are we paying our running backs to how much production we're receiving, and then what that looks like throughout the league, right? So is there a comparable team that's spending less than we are that it's getting the same production? And if that answer is yes, then that means we are in a negative return on investment. And it's not to take away from Dalvin. I think Dalvin's extremely talented. I'd love to have him forever. But, especially with Kwesi being a finance guy, I can definitely see him taking an approach of how much are we getting for our money, right? For every dollar we spend, how many yards are we getting? Right. And so I think that approach, we're probably going to see a bit more of a Belichickian way of running a roster, where if we can get someone cheaper, that can get us close, right? But we're saving an immense amount of money. Let's say we have 10% drop off in production, but we have 70% savings, right? The answer is obvious. So, but as far as your Daniil take, I think that's a good one. I don't think we've seen enough from him this year to say he's worth another big extension or anything like that. And I love Daniil. This has come from somebody who, hey, I hope he gets 6 sacks next week. But it just is what it is so far through 4 weeks.
One thing I'll say on Daniil is, even though the production there with the sacks has not been there, he's been getting pressure. He has been getting pressure. He has been showing up in that. So I know that doesn't show up on the stat sheet unless you count QB pressures, but I think he's been playing better than what we think, but at the same time, the production just hasn't been there from a sack standpoint, which we obviously want to see, but how many times has he been a part of disrupting a play because of just the pressure? I mean, we even saw it in the game last week when Goff had to get rid of the ball and just loft it downfield and was intercepted by Metellus. He was being chased by, I think, Hunter and Zadarius Smith. Dave, appreciate you being in the been solid in the run game too. Appreciate you popping in here, Dave from Minnesota Sports Talk. We just started a new show, Under the Lights. That'll be coming up tomorrow night. But so I'm interested to see how that goes. And the Daniil thing, I I don't know if I could see the Vikings moving on from him this year, but going forward, maybe it's a possibility just because, again, with the money situation the way it is, you're going to have to cut costs somewhere. Maybe it is with Danielle Hunter down the line here. But Daniel, your thoughts?
Well, I think just to kind of hit on, I think both you guys, or all three of you, are right when it comes to Dalvin Cook. I think the league wants players like him. So they want the dual threat back. They want a guy who can run. They want a guy who can pass catch. I mean, that's what everyone wants. But then to Carson's point, is he worth the money when it comes to that? Or can you supplement that with a guy out of the draft or potentially a free agent? Because there's going to be other teams that are maybe looking to move a guy that might have similar talents to that. So do we want to move on from him? I do think it's going to be the last year for Dalvin Cook in purple. Daniil, I'm not going to say I would be surprised if he is. I just don't, because I think that would really hinder the defense. And now the Harrison Smith part of it too. I think today's injury to Lewis Cine plays a big part in that as well. With him going down on a severe leg injury, I mean, that's broken. I mean, I don't think we need to wait out for.
In the chat here, sorry to cut you off, Daniel.
Yeah.
Lewis Cine is out for the season. Lower leg fracture, just devastating, man.
I mean, if you saw a freeze frame of that thing, it was sideways.
It was horrible.
That was ugly.
I didn't see it. I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Please. My gosh.
Yeah, it's not something you want to be looking at when you're eating breakfast. But he was a guy that obviously hasn't quite hit where he needed to be to get a starting job. Yeah, going behind Cam Bynum, especially last week in that Detroit game with Harrison Smith out. You'd really have liked to see our first round pick in there, but obviously he was a step behind. This is only going to set him back further.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, he's going to have a year of game tape and he's going to be able to watch the team and get the schemes and learn from that. But but just being out for this year, I think is huge. So that might actually hold Harrison Smith back on for another year at least, just to kind of mend that gap in between getting Lewis Cine football ready.
Yeah.
True.
David, go ahead.
I think that, like, with Lewis Cine being hurt right now, and I don't want to say it, the bust rate goes up really, really high now. Yeah. Because now he's going to be 2 years behind. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing about these athletic guys coming from college. Like, some of these guys are just athletic, and playing a safety position is more of a cerebral position. Like, Harrison Smith can play for the next couple of years because he's never been fast. Mm-hmm. He's just a smart player, and with Lewis Cine going down, it's tough. Like, I really wanted to see him in kind of the special package blitz packages, like I wanted to see something like that, but it's tough, man. He's young. I just really hope he rehabs, but I'm just really afraid now. Like, the whole bus situation is going up because he's going to be 2 years behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just terrible news for Lewis Cine. Hopefully it's a quick recovery. But yeah, that's not what you wanted to see. And like you mentioned, Daniel, he's already kind of been maybe a little bit behind the 8 ball just from a development standpoint, at least from what we were hoping to see. And but yeah, man, we hope that he recovers quickly and hopefully he's able to come back and make an impact for this team. Anything else that sticks out to you guys? David, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to go back to the running back situation real quick.
Yeah.
What I've noticed in the past couple of years with the devaluation of the running back, so you're seeing these receivers get paid crazy money, right? So you're going to see the devaluation of the receiving core start to come to play too, because you're going to see you got guys like Christian Kirk. Who's Christian Kirk? Who is that guy? Like, he's the guy from Arizona, right? Yep. He got like the most money in this offseason. Like, who is he? Yeah,
I don't think he was worth that, but I mean, he's been solid so far for Jacksonville, but not worth that money.
Exactly. He's been solid. So you're going to see guys like JJ who's going to take that money to go so far, and what teams are going to do is they're going to say, now we have to devalue this position, because back in the day when Adrian Peterson and your Matt Fortes and your Marshawn Lynch's, they were getting all the money. So the league devalued that position because, hey, if a running back can't block, he can't play third down. So now you're going to get to the point where if a receiver can't take a top off of a defense, we're not going to pay him either. So it's just every couple of years you kind of see like the shuffle of the money of these positions, or where the league comes together and devalues this position and that position. That's all I want to say about the money situation. But I just want you guys to really like look at that, because Justin Jefferson is going to get a crazy contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be crazy.
It's the pendulum, right?
Yeah, it's going to be
Go ahead, Tony.
crazy.
You know, we
So-
always see it swing one way or the other, right? Like we saw this, and really the whole situation we're seeing with running backs is exactly like you said, David. We had this big influx of these bell cow backs
Yep.
where they were getting paid an exorbitant amount of money. And then after the market got so price heavy, that team started to basically scale back and go, well, look what we could do for less.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's a copycat league, right? Everybody's
yeah.
going to copy that. And you're exactly right. You know, you give it a few years, you're going to see receivers are going to do the same thing, right? So that's a good point. Good take.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get into our final statements as we wrap up here. I mean, we probably could go on for a few hours yet, but let's go ahead and get into our final statements. I guess I'll go ahead and get rolling with my final statement. Glad to be 3-1. I just saw somebody put out on Twitter like we could easily be 1-3. But you know what? How many games last year did we lose by one score?
Mm-hmm.
How many games? It was an enormous amount of games. Like I don't even want to think of really the number anymore, but it was a lot. And
I want to say 5, but yeah.
it was 5. So I mean, in the fact that we're able to win one score games, like that says a lot about this team. The resiliency, like I said, of this team to be able to win those games. Like I'm not necessarily thrilled with how it happened, but it happened. It happened. They got the win. You know, if it gets to the postseason and they win like this, then yeah, I mean, I'll be taking it. But I do think against better teams, because like I said in the beginning, I don't think the Saints are that great of a team. I don't think the Lions are that great of a team. They're an improved team. They could potentially push for 7 wins, maybe, but I don't think those teams are great. But what I'll say is, I think if we can continue, like I said before, to develop this offense, continue to improve week to week in the short moments of, you know, we saw how Kevin O'Connell comes out with some really good drives to start the game, at least in the Green Bay game. And today we saw the scripted plays working well. Can now he take his play calling to a new level and be able to do that throughout the entire game? Can we see Kirk continue to elevate his game? He needs to continue to get better. Can we see some of these receivers not drop the football? Can we see some more of that not happen? And then can we also see the offensive line maybe be a little bit more consistent too? I thought they played pretty well last week. This week it was a little bit more shaky. So can we just consistency? That's the main thing I'd like to see from this team. Defensively, I thought we played well today. I thought there was definitely moments for sure where we were playing lax in coverage and all that, like your points, David, there. But I think that was a step in the right direction. But again, it was against Andy Dalton. It was against an offense that had 3 of their main starters out of the game. So now what are you going to do next week against a Bears team that you should win by double digits against? We should have won double digits against the Saints. But again, a win's a win. Consistency going forward. Let's go to Daniel here, and then we'll let Daniel get out of here. Daniel, what's your final statement?
Yeah, I'll agree with the majority of those things. I think the defense did step up a little bit this week, but the prevent style defense that we still play confuses me. Detroit was awful. What we did against the Eagles was awful. We didn't adjust. We didn't adapt. We just continued to give up chunk plays. And, you know, teams will kill you if they get 7 yards of completion easily. I mean, almost uncontested. So I still think throughout the season, our defense does need to improve. And I'm not even going to put that on the players as much as I am the position that they're put in on the defensive play call. I'd like to see that be a little bit more aggressive, maybe bring a blitz now and then, something crazy like that. The offense does still need to set up. That's the biggest thing to me. My final statement for this week, especially, and it has been basically every week except the Green Bay week, is what are we doing? I mean, we got top 5 running back in the NFL, top 2 wide receiver in the NFL, if not number 1. You know, we got a pretty good backup wide receiver in the way Adam Thielen looks like he's lost a step this year to me more than he has in the past. KJ Osborne was pretty quiet this game, but he should be more involved. Both those guys should have more looks considering the wide receiver that they have on the opposite side of the field from them. I've already complained about the tight ends. I mean, after Johnny Munt dropped that one, I'm like, let's cut everybody and start over because we've had too many drops, too many blown blocking.
Start over, rebuild.
Yeah,
Here we go.
Well,
Finally,
tight end position. Let's try and figure it out some other way. But I just think my biggest thing is this offense is really, really underperforming for the talent that they have.
100%. Hey, Daniel, we really appreciate you joining, man.
Appreciate it, guys.
Hopefully we'll get to have you back on in the future. Take care, man.
Bad luck to your Coyotes next week.
Go Yotes. Appreciate it, Daniel. All right. Let's go over to you, David. What are your final thoughts on this one?
Final thoughts is the win is ugly, but they're 3-1. They got the Bears take care of business, and then they got the Dolphins, what we talked about last week, and I think that's a win now, considering probably Tua is not going to play for a month. I mean, I'm just really, just like you guys say, consistency. I really want this offense to start gelling. I want them to start throwing some kind of wrinkles in. Maybe if we can hurry and get to the bye where they can sit back and have a week where they can just kind of look at all the film together and kind of add a couple of wrinkles. But as of being 3-1 and winning ugly, I'm kind of happy with it, because last year was tough with all those close calls that were just wins that we could have won and they just dropped the ball on, So I'm pretty much happy with where they're at, as long as they're developing and going in the right direction. As far as a tight end, they did sign a tight end to the practice squad, which is interesting.
Yeah. Jacob Hollister, I believe.
Jacob
was
Hollister,
the guy
the kid that played in Seattle. So that's interesting. I don't know what to say about that, but it's going to be interesting. But going forward, the Vikings, it will be a disappointment if they are not 5-1 going to the bye week at this point.
Yep. I agree, man. I agree. It's I said 4-2 because of the Dolphins game, but now, like you mentioned, with Tua being out, that changes things a little bit. I mean, I love Teddy Bridgewater. I thought that was a good sign for them to get him as their backup, and I think he's a really solid quarterback as a backup for sure. But that's a game where you got to think about, okay, we got to win that type of game, even though it's at Miami. Will I be as disappointed if we lose that game? I would have been more disappointed if we would have lost today than if we lose at Miami. But obviously, you would like to be 5-1 going into the bye week, considering the roster situation. So, hey, David, man, we appreciate you having on again, and looking forward to hopefully having you on again next week, man.
Quick question. Are you guys on the East Coast? Because I'm in LA and we went up since 6 o'clock, so I got to get some rest.
I'm Central Time, so I was up at 8:30 for 8:30.
6 o'clock trying to watch this game. All right, guys.
All right, yeah, man. Take care. All right, Tony, how about you? What do you got for a final statement for us here?
Well, I've got a couple things. So first one is that I want us to think back of last year. And look, I'm not saying we're Super Bowl bound, but I will say, if you look at Cincinnati and the way that they kind of started last season, they had to mull their way through a few ugly wins before they got their footing. So I think I'm going to pump the brakes personally on feeling too blue about where we are at 3-1. Every good team has to find and navigate their way through a few ugly wins, and we've done that so far this year, so we can feel good about that. The second thing, just moving forward, I just want to see the offense and Kirk Cousins specifically get more confident, get that swagger back, because for the last, I don't want to know, maybe 8-9 quarters, I feel like we've been missing, minus that final drive we saw against the Lions. I feel like we're just missing a gear from Kirk specifically, where I'm used to that ball kind of zipping out, where he's being very he knows where he's going with it. It's very determined as to where he's going with the ball. I feel like we're seeing him play a little timid at this point. And what I'm hoping for is that next week with the Bears, I think we have an opportunity to really kind of hit our stride and step on the gas. And I think if we can do that, and we can start to have that like really positive train start to roll out of the station where this team feels good and they expect to win, I think that's where we'll see a lot of good things come from this team this year. But I don't feel like this team expects to win yet. I think we're still playing on these, last season fears of, oh, here we go again. And until we can really start again putting the pedal.
What are you talking about? We never have that.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But I think if we can hit that next gear where, again, where we go into every game thinking like we're going to win this game, and I mean as a ball club. Obviously, as a fan base, we don't think we'll win any game. No, but as a ball club, I want to see us push and have that swagger back that we saw in like that mid 2009 season where we went out there and we imposed our will against teams. So let's hope that starts next week.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting to see if like you said, can they do what they need to do next week? And I think they need to do what they probably should have done this week. I'll probably go to my grave saying it, but they need to be able to beat the Bears by at least 10 points. Like, I'd like to see, 17, 20 points difference game next week where they're able to beat that team. Because here's the thing, like, the Saints actually do have some pretty talented wide receivers in Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry on offense. The Bears have Darnell Mooney, and he's good, but he is not a number one receiver. He's a number two, maybe probably more like a number three type of receiver on most teams. He cannot be a guy looking like Justin Jefferson out there next week. He cannot be looking like a Michael Thomas. He can't be looking like Cooper Kupp next week. You've got to be able to cover him well, and maybe it'll be the Amir Smith-Marset breakout game next week against the Vikings, but it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. I think it is definitely one of those games where the Vikings need to come out hot and they need to stay hot. I want to see that consistency next week, especially. And next week also, by the way, I'll be talking once again with the Bears Talk Underground host, podcast host, and we'll be previewing that game coming up here, I should say this week. So it's already, as it is technically Sunday, the beginning of the week for most people, but or for whatever. Anyways, Tony, anything else before we say goodbye here to the show?
No, just super excited. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, hopefully we get you on some more here, and I'll have you hopefully stay on here quick after the show, if that's all right with you, and then we can go ahead and close things out here right now. Once again, make sure to subscribe to the Skol Purple Podcast YouTube channel where you're probably viewing this, unless you're getting it somewhere else magically. But that is what we would love for you to do. Ring the bell. Stay up to date on when we're going to go live. Tomorrow night, I'll have my show with Dave, Under the Lights, from Minnesota Sports Talk, a lead-in to Monday Night Football tomorrow night. So make sure to join us for that right here on Skol Purple Podcast YouTube channel. Also on his YouTube channel. So make sure to join us for that. And I'll have a Bears Talk Underground episode with him coming up as well. So looking forward to that. And looking forward to hopefully the Vikings starting 4-1 with a win over the Bears next week. But they did get the win today. And that is what matters. As much as frustration as there was during the game, the win was gotten by the Vikings, and that's all that matters. So appreciate everybody for tuning in, and as always, Skol.